with one set of girls and banner. Cause I done fed up, you done fed up, he done fed up, she done fed up, we done fed up, the people fed up. You hiding corruption inside the cup, look how evil set up. The people fed up. Every picture you take and promise you make, everything you do is about clouds. Then you come into me for I shake your hand, there's nothing to smile about. Corruption inside every sector, but when it comes to them, they send you. Try investigate efficiency, right? Go talk to Barrett and Sue, cause I done fed up, you done fed up, he done fed up, she done fed up, we done fed up, the people fed up. You're hiding corruption inside the cup, look how evil set up. The people fed up. I done fed up by the dirty water, low pressure, want scream and tell somebody.
My name is Jasity Kaldata Francis Wakenham, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my X next to the cup, and what they are doing today I can't take it, so I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
Hello and good evening and good night, and welcome to Straight Up with Mark. Yes, good evening again, good night to you, and welcome to Straight Up. Why am I getting a feedback? Why am I getting a all right, let's sort this out. All right, let's go again. Good evening to you, and welcome to Straight Up with Mark Benshop. Good night to some of you who are far away, wherever you're joining us from. I am sitting in for Mark Benshop tonight. What's happening in your neck of the woods? What do you all want us to talk about tonight? I can't do the Mark thing well. Mark is out and Lemon is out, so I'm on my own. But I expect Mr. Paul Slow to join me, to come to the rescue, and we are going to be talking about issues that are within the remit of Mr. Slow. So please share the link and let everyone know that Mark Benshop is on tonight and that I'm sitting in for him. Welcome to some of you. Some of you were with me early in the night. Some of you, I see some names there I haven't seen for a long time. Good evening to you, Garfield. Brenda Casey, who doesn't visit me very much these days. But Brenda, welcome. It's good to come on this side, in this neck of the woods, as Mark would say. And here you are. London, good evening. Good evening to you, Siobhan McDonald, Lyndon Gill. I see Mr. Ben, who is a regular on my side of the wood. Good evening to you, Lynette Nelson. Welcome to Politics. There we go, Politics 101. It's on my brains. This is Straight Up. This is Straight Up. And of course, we are still in the season of the budget. and we'll be talking to Paul Slow about the budget and what's in there for the police and the military and so forth, because we don't get to talk about that much. We talk about all the other areas, infrastructure, education, healthcare. So tonight we're going to talk to Mr. Slow about what's in that budget for our men and women in uniform, as we say here in the United States. I think Mr. Slow is on. BV man, good night.
Good night, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We had some in Buxton. We had some people come from BV and live in Buxton, and they got the name them BV man. So the father was BV man, all the son that turned BV man, and the grandson and great grandson, them all of them we call them BV man.
BV man, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a proud Baronian.
There you go. And I always say that better for Wackden, Baron, BV. They've produced the most government ministers of any village in Guyana. Did you know that?
Well, yes, I heard you saying that by what Mingo, I know in my time by board, you had, who else? You had this.
You got Henry Jeffrey.
Henry Jeffrey, yeah. I met him today.
Nanda Gopal.
Nanda Gopal, yeah.
Yes.
Coco Wilson was, I think, Coco Wilson too.
Yeah, Coco Wilson, EMG Wilson.
Yes.
This boy, who's the Labour Minister.
Yeah, Pilori Joe.
Pilori Joe.
yeah.
And I know we're missing a couple. I know we're missing Cicely Baird.
Cicely Baird, yeah, education.
Yeah. I can't think of any village that produced so many government ministers. And I'm sure there are a couple that we are missing. We got about 6 there. We got about 6 there.
Right off the bat, yes.
Yes, right off the bat like that. What have you been up to?
I've been trying. I've been trying with the times. As shared, we say the jagabats are still after you and things, so you can't give up. You have to fight to make sure that I still have criminal charges against me, so I got to clear my name and all of that. So the battle is on. The battle is on.
Good evening to all of you who are now joining in. It's not Politics 101. It is straight up. I'm in a different neck of the woods, as Mark would say. Mr. Slow, it's budget time, and we've been talking a lot about the budget, and I haven't had the chance to talk to anybody about the sector that has to do with security and so forth. And I know that would be one of the sectors that you would have paid attention to. What's in the budget for the security forces? What is it that they are emphasizing and so on? We know that they have spent more than 50% of the budget, this budget and previous budgets, on infrastructure. What do you see in there for the men and women in uniform?
Well, I noted, I haven't gone through it in any great detail, but I noted that I think it's $34.4 billion allocated to the police. That I think capital and current expenditure. And I would expect, as you rightly said, the emphasis over the past couple of years has been on buildings and infrastructure. But for the police, I think it requires more than that. No one can deny that police require much more resources. They require, first of all, you have to start with spending money to train and equip the force properly. I don't think that is being done. They tell you about the economy and all of that, but who are the trainers? What type of exposure of these trainers are? That is a big question. And we continue to say on Speaking Out that you have to have proper training facilities. You have to have proper people with the proper knowledge, the adequate knowledge that they can pass on to police. I said, when it comes to the senior officer corps of the Guyana Police Force, they need to be exposed to proper policing training, as used to happen back in the years. Overseas, policemen, senior men were sent to the Staff College in the UK. I was a recipient of that, I was a graduate of that program. FBI Academy, the Royal Mounted Police in Canada. Let me say, in those days, you used to get scholarship. You know, the British Overseas Development Fund to go to the UK, and the Americans will sponsor students to go to the FBI Academy. So too, I think the Canadians sponsored, even regionally, we had the Jamaica training arrangement there. But in recent years, police officers are not sent to for these specialized training. And I think the impact or the lack of that training, we see it in the way the people, these senior officers perform. So I would like to know that in this current budget, whenever it's finally passed, that and I'll go through to see what is allocated to training, because it's not only, it cannot be only about buildings and that type of thing. It has to be developing the human resource capacity in the force. And no one can deny that the police force as currently exists lack the capacity. We're talking about investigation. They need to make sure that we investigate, we can do proper investigation, proper scientific investigation. You need policemen to be trained and equipped in that area. We need to ensure, I've been emphasizing in recent times, that policemen should be equipped with less than lethal weapons. You know, as it is now, when a policeman is sent out to go on a report or to go on any duty, if he's armed with a lethal weapon, a firearm, a pistol, a rifle, or a revolver, a shotgun. That cannot continue to be so in this modern time. So when the policeman is confronted with a situation where less than lethal weapons should be used, as we saw in Maikoni.
Yes.
Right. Recently in Maikoni, they resort to the lethal weapon, the only thing they have, and people are killed. And I have said, you cannot blame the ranks who are sent out. They cannot get all the blame. The system has to, the government, to be more precise, has to share the blame, because you have to make sure that those men are properly equipped and trained, and that is not happening. So in this budget, I would hope that some sizable portion is allocated to making sure that policemen are properly trained and equipped. When we talk about training, we talk about training in general duties. We talk about training in traffic, training in CID, forensic training, all the tactical training. All of these things need to be addressed very urgently.
Mr. Paul Slow here, who I refer to, I value Mr. Paul Slow's views on these matters because he says up front, I'm a policeman at heart. I'm a police. So when he critiques the force, he's not critiquing it as someone who is hostile to the police. And that is why I think there's an authenticity to his views on this matter. Mr. Paul Slow, you said that they're not sending people out on training as they used to be. When did this start, actually? And what are the reasons that they have de-emphasized training at these international agencies?
Well, let me say this. There is, as Assistant Commissioner Calvin Brutus, the embattled Assistant Commissioner Calvin Brutus said, that sometime in 2020, he attended a meeting at which the Vice President and others were present, and they talk about this diversity. In other words, and I know long before that, they had what they used to say, they want to have optics. So if let's say four places were made available on a course, it was not about the four most qualified persons. You have to have what they perceive to be some type of ethnic balance. So maybe you send 2 Afro-Guyanese and you send 2 Indo-Guyanese, regardless of if the people were qualified. And that started the decline in the whole thing. I know long since when I was in the force, many training programs were not taking up free training programs because they wanted this diversity, and they were commissioners, Felix, Larry Lewis, even Henry Green, who were not in favor of that. They said we had, in the case of when Larry Lewis was there was a training board comprising senior members of the force and civilians, qualified civilians, so that when a training program came up and the list of candidates for that program were identified, what they will do, they will then interview those persons and decide who are the persons most suitable for the course. But they moved away from that, and the thing started to go south. Now, I can tell you, for example, the Police Staff College in the United Kingdom, Bramshill, Hampshire, USA, UK. That was one of the more valuable programs in the British Commonwealth. People from all over went on that program. Once you were identified for senior leadership position, that was the gold standard for officers. And the last attendance on that program was back in 1994. 1994. Since then, no one has attended that program in the United Kingdom. And I know that because I was the last person to have attended that program in 1994. We used to have people being sent to the FBI Academy to do, and not only investigators, but they have a variety of courses to teach senior police management and all of that. I went there in 1998, and I think a few people might have gone after. Royal Canadian Mounted Police, for the longest while, people have not been sent on these specialized programs. And we are seeing the effects of these people not being, senior people not being adequately trained. And again, I say you cannot blame them. You have to blame the system.
You have to blame the system, Mr. Paul Slow here, who has been teaching us on these public platforms about the workings of our police force and, of course, the security system in general. Yes, it is Mark Benshop, 107.1, straight up. Wherever you're joining us from, I see some of you are joining us here from Washington, D.C., Maryland area. Lily, that's my home, my real home in the United States of America. Where I am now is Borough home. Washington, D.C., Maryland is still where my people are. All of you are joining us. Mr. DeFlormont, joining us from that area. Welcome to Straight Up with Mark Benshop. Our guest tonight is Mr. Paul Slow. Mr. Slow, you clearly could not be saying that there is not need for diversity in the force. I'm sure that you would be the first person, but you're talking about diversity in the force that is 90% and more of one ethnicity. All right. And the diversity has to take into consideration the population in the force. So I was struck last year, I think it was, not in the year before. I was on a panel with you, and you made a stunning revelation that I should have noticed and others should have noticed. After all, we talk about race and ethnicity all the time. But you pointed out of the 10 commanders, 6 of them were Indo-Guyanese in a force that is where Indian Guyanese make up less than 10%. That can't be diversity and justice, because if you talk about diversity, a diversity has to be linked to the nature of the force itself, the composition of the force itself. So the diversity that they're talking about has led to a lopsidedness at the top of the police force, which means that they did not target diversity in terms of recruitment into the force. They're targeting diversity into control of the force. Am I out of place to come to that conclusion?
Perfectly put, Dr. Hinds. That is what they targeted, and the evidence is still there. You know, as a former policeman, I like to base my arguments on evidence. And they have not come out to say anything since then. It has continued. the situation is basically the same. So you have, as we speak now, we still have a situation where in the force where you have 90%, as we say, approximately 90% Afro-Guyanese, the top layer of the force, the divisional commanders, they are what? You have divisional command, regional division 1, led by an Indo-Guyanese, regional division 2, Indo-Guyanese, regional division 3, Indo-Guyanese, regional division 4B, Indo-Guyanese, regional division 6, Indo-Guyanese. And it goes on like that. The traffic chief, you have Soku, you have the deputy commissioner, administration, the finance officer, and it goes on. And these are just the ones at the top. But when you come to the middle level, it's the same thing. And let me say this: I have nothing against these people or in Indian Guyanese being in command position, but most of those people are not qualified for the position. They are not qualified, and it shows up whenever there's a issue to be debated or discussed. It shows, and that cannot be the diversity that we all want. Right, as you pointed out, if you're going to talk about diversity, it has to perhaps start with recruiting to make sure that there is a balance from there. And let me say this, as I've said before, when Larry Lewis was commissioner, it was recognized that for whatever reason, and there were commissions and all of these things look into why Indo-Guyanese are not joining the police force way back in the 60s with the ICJ and all of that, right? They went way back and they looked at all the different reasons why. When Larry Lewis was commissioner in the 90s, it was recognized that, well, one of the things that they said, it was difficult for young Indian men on the quarantine on the Essequibo Coast to join the police force because the training was centralized in Georgetown. And therefore, when they left quarantine, for example, came to Georgetown, if they got a 2-hour pass or a 3-hour time off, they can't get back to their family and back to the training arena, right? That was, whereas if the people who lived in Georgetown on the East Coast, perhaps, whereas them, you can make a quick spin, see your family, or your family can come visit you. So what did Larry Lewis do? Larry Lewis established the college at Adventure on the quarantine. And one of the reasons, or one of the aims of that college was to attract young Indian men into the force. He did likewise at Surrey on the Essequibo Coast, where he established the Richard Peikel Training Institution. But then it's the same thing you get. For whatever reason, I am not a sociologist, but for whatever reason, they do not join. And even when they join, they don't stay. People say, well, maybe because of the pay, they talk about dieting. All of these things have been looked into. But the reality is that young Indian men are not joining the force. And when we talk about men, it is even worse when it comes to young female Indian. They're not joining the force. So for them to, and I believe Butas, I believe Butas when he talked about this policy of diversity, because the evidence is there. The evidence is there, as we suggest, while they're not joining, they want to make sure, at least that is what was conveyed, that at least in these command positions, you are to have these Indians favored for these command positions. And let me say this, and it is they're favored at the expense of the qualified black colleagues.
Yes.
Let me repeat that. They are favored at the expense of the qualified black colleagues. And the thing is demoralizing to the force, despite what they want to say. The force right now is in a mess because of that and other policies.
Mr. Paul Slow here tonight talking us through diversity and policing. I have my theory, those of you who have been following me, that you can't demonize an institution. You can't tell your people over decades that this institution is anti-Indian. This institution is where they rape Indian women, they kick down your door, they this, they that, and then expect those people to want to go and join an institution like that. I think the decades of demonization of policing and soldiering among East Indians has played I'm not saying it's the only factor, but I am very sure that it plays a large factor. It plays a big role in Indian people not wanting to go and join the police force. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Slow?
But yeah, exactly, because over the years, I recall during the election campaign, PPP leaders telling people they're gonna kick down your door, they're gonna do you all type of harm and so on. They demonize the police force, and therefore, if you're gonna demonize the police force, quite naturally, a section of the people are not likely to want to join, and we have seen that they're not joining. Despite all the incentives and so on, they are. The truth is that I have heard comments. Let me say this: when people of look at the remunerations, right? They will tell you, why if I plant 2 beds of shallot within a couple months, I'm making more than that. And I'm not in danger, and nobody's going to shout at me and all of that. I'm not going to be working those 12-hour shifts and all of that. That is the reality. That right now, policemen are leaving the force by the droves. They get to the stage where even when policemen now tender the resignation, they're refusing to accept the resignation. And some policemen have decided, well, if you don't want to accept the resignation, I'm going to just walk off the job. And that is the reality. That is the reality. Only recently, I heard the president boasting about the lowest a constable get is $130,000 a month. Now, that is not even competitive with some of the private security forces, because they're offering similar. Are we talking about less stress, shorter hours, and the like? So people prefer to gravitate towards the mushrooming private security rather than going into the police force, right? And a lot of people, and there are good men and women in the police force, but a lot of people join now because, as they say, they get run-ins, so they join to run-ins, and that is the reality. And I would hope that they provide resources to address all of those things. Don't worry about this band-aid. And the thing is in a mess, and as I've said repeatedly, you have to first admit that it's in a mess before you can look for solutions. But if you keep telling you, oh, crime is under control, traffic, they're now making a distinction between road accident and road incidents. People are dying on the road, but they're making, in order to, they want to look good, so they tell you about road accidents and road incidents. At the end of the day, people are dying, and they don't want to face the reality and decide to make put proper measures. A lot of band-aids you're having. Every time you hear, there have been so many amendments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. And what has happened? We are not seeing any significant impact on the way people use the road, and the amount of people who are maimed and killed, and the amount of property damage. You're not seeing any significant impact, which means that perhaps they're doing the wrong thing.
Perhaps they're doing the wrong thing. Good evening to all of you who are joining this program. Some of you have missed from my program, but I'm a forgiving man. I will ask Mark to host the program more often so I can see you all more often. I understand my classmate, my schoolmate, because I was a bigger boy in school than he. I understand my schoolmate, Basil Bradshaw. We when we were going to school, we never called him Basil. We said Bradshaw. Is here, and he was no bigger known something when we were school by. He fast like a lightning. He run fast, and I'm surprised that he did not go further. I think it might have been injury, because when he was a schoolboy, he fast like a lightning. Very, very, very good athlete. But it shows that our people are so. We operate at different levels at the same time, that he could pivot from athletics, that he was very good as a young man, and today he's one of our great cultural ambassadors, entertainer, and part of the media. Good evening to you, Bradshaw. Good evening, and welcome to Straight Up. And it's David Hinds, of course, sitting in for Mark Bishop. When Caesar of Over to You on Saturday night. Please join Wayne tomorrow night. He will be on. Andrea Boston, thank you. The Honorable Chief Justice, I like you all bad. I like you all bad. Welcome. Leighton, you are right, because you just be on over at Politics 101. I'm catching a lot of them here tonight, but not you. You and thing. I want to take you to a place, Mr. Slow, and I'm taking you to this place because I think you have the capacity, and you've demonstrated that, to really link policing with other areas of endeavor. First, we have laid out this diversity thing that really has amounted to an imbalance in the leadership of the force. From what you know of the institution, the police force as an institution, what could a development like that, how could it, or what impact, negative impact, could that have on the force itself? Because you're talking about a particular kind of institution. This is not teachers, right? Or nurses. You're talking about men in uniform. And I think that's always a nice way of putting police, but men who are carrying arms. And you have this almost brazen political play on an institution that is one of its kind. They ain't got no other institution other, like the police and the army. The other paramilitary, that's what you call them, paramilitary. But the police and the army, people are actually carrying arms in the name of the state. So when the government behaves like that, what could be the negative impact on the force itself?
Well, the first thing I would like to point out, because if it demotivates the rank and file, because what we're talking about, people are seeing it and they are feeling it. A man knows, and when you're in the force, I spent 37 years in the force, and I can tell you, when you are there, your peers. You're so competitive that hey, I better than the man. I know this police work more than that man. I am more disciplined than he is. And when you're doing that assessment, and then you see, notwithstanding all of that, this man is moving ahead, and you recognize that the only reason he is moving ahead is because of his ethnicity. It demoralizes, and word spread by right now people have been saying, like, I gotta get corrupt to get promotion, because they know that some of the people who are recognized and who are promoted are corrupt, are dishonest, are unprofessional. And therefore, one, it demoralizes some, and two, it maybe encourages others to do likewise and to join the band. I have been saying to people, be professional. Forget about all of that. Forget about the filthy lucre. Be professional and do a professional job. So, and then it impacts the society, because if you have a force that is demoralized and don't want to do, or for whatever reason, they're not going to attend to reports. They're not going to patrol with any zeal or zest. They're not going to respond to your call. And therefore, who suffers? A man will tell you, they're doing that to me. I can just go, put in my hours, and make sure you do as little as possible. And at the end of the month, I collect my pay. I am not going to go out there and put myself in any danger, because there is no real reward in terms of promotion and all that. That is the reality. That is the reality. So therefore, once you politicize the force, let me say this. People have made the argument that the force has always been politicized to some level. That argument has been made. But the level of politicization in the past 4 or 5 years is unprecedented. You have a force that hardly, a command structure, that hardly does anything without some politician telling them doing it. We have seen that over and over. Matters to be investigated, politicians put their hand on it. We have the classic case of Nigel Dharamlal. That is a case should have gone before the court quick time. The evidence was there. People intervened. And it demoralizes round. I doing my work, and look what happened. Look, people on the road, traffic ranks will complain and tell you. Even recently, the former British High Commissioner, Mr. Quinn, wrote a letter in the media, and he alluded to that a traffic man on the road, you stop someone, he picks up a phone, he calls some senior person, the senior person or some politician, and they tell you to stand down. Wow, you believe people are going to be motivated in that manner? And that is the reality, because men will tell you, if I stop a man on the road by, you can call somebody, and I can look stupid. Man, it got to the point where men tell you, somebody, it's better you make a raise, better you make a hustle, because if you don't do that, and some of the people who they pull in, they have reported, they will tell them plain, you better take this, because if you don't do that, I'm gonna make a call and you're gonna get nothing. That is the reality on the road. So once you politicize the force in the manner that they have done, you're gonna get these negative reactions. And look what has been happening now. People have lost respect for policemen in uniform. Almost every week, you see people fighting policemen in uniform, being assaulted, being beaten. There's a recent case, I highlighted it a few days ago, where a businessman in their security thing assaulted a policeman. He assaulted a policeman, sentenced to 1 month in prison. And the commitment warrant did not even reach the prison.
1 month.
1 month.
I
think. Look, recently, men on the west coast of Bobbies, we saw a big melee there with people with stick and all sort of thing, resisting arrest, assaulting police. I think they were all arrested and remanded. That is a spin-off. That is a spin-off from what is going on, because people don't have respect for the police. And many times we say, yeah, policemen are wrong. And most times when you see those policemen are wrong, when I analyze it, I say it's because they are not properly trained. When I joined the force in 1974, 6 months in training school, 6 straight months. I spent 6 months. I joined in the force of March 1974 and came out of training school in the force of September 1974. There was a set came in before us on the 15th of February 74. So they spent 6 months plus 2 weeks. Now you have 2 months, 3 months, people out of the training school, people out, and there's no refresher course to them, because back in the day, when you finish your 6 months training, for 2 years, you are a probationer. You're not a full-fledged policeman. You're a probationer. And then after the 2 years, you go back into training school for your final training, right? And the standing order and the law provides that if at the completion of that 2 years and the final training, it is felt that you are not likely to become a well-conducted constable, you are discharged. You are discharged from the force. But now, every time they bury everybody coming in a place. And that is the reason. I have never seen, outside of this Brutus matter, I mean, that is perhaps the worst we can think about. Other incidents where policemen are charged with drugs, policemen are charged with all kind of robbery, all kind of offenses. Policemen are charged. And I say that, and let me say this, many of those cases, like when policemen are intercepted with drugs and committing other criminal activities, it is policemen who are catching them, So you can't knock the entire force. It's not civilian. So you still have good men and women in the force who are prepared to stand up and do the right thing. But I know that they are under lots and lots of pressure. Those few good ones are under lots and lots of pressure.
Under lots and lots of pressure. Mr. Slow, you made the point about, the politicization of the force, and the argument is that the force was always politicized. And you're quite correct in the sense that politicians of all times have always tried to politicize the force. But I do not see a Lloyd Barker, for example, would get anybody telling me what to do in the way that these people are telling this present commissioner, for example, what to do. I think as powerful as Burnham was, I cannot see a Lloyd Barker if Burnham pushed the envelope. I think men like that would have, and I've heard stories where they said, no, I ain't doing that. I love you, you're greatest president. But you're not a police. I am a police. I am heading this institution. I'm a professional chief. I'm not doing that. Do you share that view? That one of the big differences is that back then you had professionals who would tell the politicians, no, I'm drawing the line here. But you have now people who are leading the force who are not prepared to draw the line. As Mark would say, your take, Mr. Sloan.
Yeah, there was a problem, Doc, and to the viewers. In those days, I joined briefly with Carl Austin, then Henry Fraser to Lloyd Barker, to Balan Ragabir, to Lila. Those men were policemen. Not because they wore the uniform, but because they knew policing and the job. So they could have, when certain things were told to them, they could have said to the politicians, no, we can't do that because of so. They knew what was the correct thing. I have been lamenting the fact that part of the problem with the force now, you have a lot of people, senior people, who are not policemen. They don't know the basics of policing. So when a politician calls and tells them, say, well, do this or do that, they don't know what is the right thing to jump on and do it. And sometimes I'm amazed and amused to hear them say certain things, and they're wrong, because when they try to explain or to justify their action, no way should that be, no way. So a politician calls, politician like to call. I had the famous or the infamous case with Gadraj back in 2003. Call, yeah, they're gonna call, but then you have to stand up. No, sir, that cannot happen. Because of so. What they did? Jack Dio joined with Gadraj to victimize me. Assistant commissioner with 11 plus years, all because of that incident. And I wasn't wrong. I told the minister that if I could not be returned to the gentleman at that time. You don't have any policeman of that caliber or with the type of knowledge now. So if somebody called and said, do this, release this man on bail, or send, that is what they're going to do. That is what they're going to do. Because one, they don't know what is the correct thing. And two, many of them owe their positions to the politicians. And that is the big problem, one of the big problems the force is facing now. I mean, it's no secret. The rank and file in the force, they know more than you and I. Who are the politicians controlling which officer and which officer buyer? That is what is going on. That is what is going on. So whereas I know, Wilson Felix, for example, I know a particular incident where Wilson Felix tell the president and Jagdu, no, sir, that is not police work. And the police force is not going to get involved in that, right? That is not police work. And you're not disobeying any order. You have a responsibility, if you're holding those high offices, to tell them that is not what the part of the mandate of the police force, and we are not going to do that. We had cases, for example, not so long ago, where policemen are called out on Saturdays to clean the streets and all of that. And nobody can tell them, so, well, look, sorry, this is not the way. Maybe, yeah, you clean around. We used to clean around the headquarters or clean around the police station, but policemen cleaning streets. You had policemen building roads, pavement on the East Bank and all with those bricks and all this other thing. Nobody to tell them, sorry, that can happen. And you're talking about policemen doing that at a time when if a person goes to a station, you're going to hear, we ain't get police to come on this report, we ain't get policemen to do that. And they're out there doing things that are not part of their mandate. That is part of the problem.
Mr. Paul Sloan, Mr. Sloan, and you said just now that, there are good men and women in the police. I tell the story often. One night about a year ago, I was at a hot dog stand. Them Venezuelan people at dog stand are going home, and it was after 1, and a police vehicle came up, and the police they came to buy the hot dog, and they recognized me. And the policeman, he said, Dr. Hinds, you shouldn't be on the street at this time. You shouldn't be on the road at this time by yourself. So I said, Chief, well, it's Saturday night, I take a little night out. He said, well, all right, don't go, wait. And those policemen, there were 4 of them in the vehicle. They bought their dog, and they said, drive, we are going to accompany you home. And they drove by me, accompanied me home, see me go in to my yard, and then they left. I was stunned because I felt so proud. I was stunned because I feel that that is the country that I want Guyana to be. That here are policemen who recognize me as a public person at 1:30 in the morning and feel that it's dangerous and accompany me home. Accompany me home. Your take, Mrs. Slow.
Yeah, well, that's, the motto, service and protection. That is the motto of the force, service and protection. And that is what policemen in my days were trained to do,
Yes.
right? And let me say this. You always had a few bad eggs. We always had a few bad eggs, but the system was geared to deal with them and to deal with them constantly. And you knew that if you stepped out of line, the system would deal with you. You knew that. But now what happens? People doing anything, impunity, policemen are not made to answer the recalcitrant one. When I was at the Police Service Commission, I did a survey only to discover that policemen were not being disciplined, even when reports were made by the Police Complaints Authority. Even when matters were investigated, went to the DPP and advised disciplinary action, nothing was being done. And you know why? Because the majority of the police officers who are there don't know how to deal with the discipline according to the act. Again, it comes back to training. It comes back to training. People are put into position and they are not prepared adequately to fill those positions. You can't put a man as a divisional commander without him going through proper training. He's going to fail. And when he fails, the entire system fails. If a man is a divisional commander fails, is the division failing. Is the police force is going to fail. And they don't recognize that. So they put incompetent people in this position and expect they're going to do well. And simple, basic matter. Let me give you a next example. We have been talking about this repeatedly. We have what you call crime files. A crime is committed or something is reported. You take statements and all of that, file. The file has a process that it should go through in the division, commander being the last person, and then if advice is needed, then it goes through to the director of public prosecutions. I discovered that in very, very simple minor cases that the commanders should deal with and advise, charge or not charge. It all gone to the DPP. Why? Because the people you have in those positions don't know. They don't know. They have not been trained to deal with those things. So the easiest way, they take the easiest route out. A file comes and send for legal advice. And then when it comes back, you implement whatever advice was given to you. That is not how the system should work. You should have people in command positions, divisional command, people in charge of the CID in the division. If it's an accident, who understands the system, who is well trained, and therefore they can see a file, read the statements, and decide, well, this charge should be preferred, and tell them. And the current system, because they have to send it all this way, it results in a lot of delay. People complain to you, I made a report to the police, and how many months passed, you didn't anything. It's because rather than dealing with it at the local level, because of lack of knowledge by these senior officers, they have to send it through to the DPP, and it takes a lot of time. That is the reality. And therefore, I say that it requires proper training. It requires proper training. And not only local training. And, they boast, even recently, when the president promoted those deputy commissioners on the 19th of December 2024, they boasted about how many people qualified from the university. So many police officers went in. Good for them to go to university, but University of Guyana don't teach policing. It don't teach policing. So at the end of the day, while they might have displayed that academic ability, you need to then rope them into some venue, some system where proper policing is taught. A university can't teach you the rudiments of good policing, and that is the problem we have. And let me say this before I forget. The resource or the resources are there. And I'm not talking about resources within the force, because you have people outside, officers who are exposed to all this training, retired officers who are willing to impart the knowledge. They are willing to impart. But you have a system where they believe, say, once a person retires at the age of 55, or well, you might be lucky, like it came to be kept on long after 55, right? Well, they are useless. That is what the culture is. They are useless. But now more than ever, I believe that the resources that are out there should be utilized in an effort to turn this force around. Because the longer it takes, is the more difficult it's going to become.
The more difficult it is going to become. Mr. Paulslow, we will have to do a part 2 of this, because I want to take you to a place. We talk about transitioning to a petro state. We talk about the clear and present danger on our border. We're talking about a new Guyana. And we've talked about a new Guyana in terms of the economy, in terms of the politics. Seldom do we talk about this petro state and the role of the police in a petro state. Part 2. So you get time to put it together, and we are going to talk about that. The role of the police in a petro state. We are transforming, we are transitioning from a poor country to we are now the fastest growing economy in the world. That doesn't have an impact just on the economy and on politics. It also has an impact on the police. And Mr. Slow, I like your what we in academia call the interdisciplinary approach. I know you serve as a security man for the cricket Wednesday's cricket board, and when you are looking at policing and security and sport, you have to have a particular understanding of the broad role of the police force. So the homework that I'm giving you is not new, because you already have done that when it comes to sport. But just a general statement on my thesis, which is that if we're talking about the transition to a petro state, it doesn't only affect the economy, it doesn't only affect politics, but very importantly, it must affect the way policing is done in the society. Over to you. Your take.
Yeah, correct. You're absolutely correct, because once you are in this transition frame, you're going to have new emerging crimes, right? You're going to have, and therefore you have to cater for those things. You can't be reactive. You have to realize things like not the cybercrime that they're using, where they have weaponized the act to deal with a man who call a man a jagabat, or you call you a crapo and you charge him. I'm not talking about that nature of cybercrime, but you're going to have fraud and those things being committed by the use of electronic devices. And therefore, you have to get people who are trained. You have to focus towards that. You have to look, one of the things I've said repeatedly, Guyana remains a cash-oriented society. You got to do a transaction, cash is the thing. Very few places you can go and use a credit card. All of those things you have to look at, because if people have to move around with large amount of cash, then they become target. And if you're going to talk about this transition to this petro economy, one can expect more. And they talk about tourists too. When a tourist comes into a country, they want to come with his credit card. Where is a Visa? Where is a MasterCard? Where is American Express? He wants to go someplace that he can just swipe. He's not accustomed to walking with cash. And then when you're going to force him to walk with cash, these are the things that you have got to address. More people are going to come, businessmen, they're establishing hotels and so on all over the place. Those things are good. You see a lot of growth. You can see. But whether there's development, that's another issue, because you would know that there's a big distinction between growth and development, right? Right? People see building going up as fast growing economy, but are we developing the institutions and the systems to make sure that this growth can be properly dealt with? I say no, a resounding no. And therefore, based on your thesis, I am saying that they have to sit down and look at it. And let me say this. That it cannot be a one-man show or a two-person show like what's going on now. You have to have a cross-fertilization of ideas. There are a lot of best practices out there, policing best practices. And that is why I say, once the senior people in particular are exposed to these colleges in the UK, FBI Academy, they will have the Canadian Mounted Police, they'll have a new thinking. Because, again, I would expect that if you're to do that, that the people will be properly selected. And it's not optics. You just take a man because he's an Indian and you send him there. And what they do too, you send somebody to India for a 1 week or a 2 week. What can a person learn in a week or a 2 week? What can the person learn in that space of time? And then they boast so many people went overseas on training. That is part of the problem. And as we say, as we move to this petro economy, all of these things we have to look at. You have to have a macro view of it. And models are out there. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Models are out there. Of course, you will take cultural nuances into consideration and to make sure that whatever is there, whatever is adapted to suit the cultural nuances of Guyana and so on. But it's the way the things are going, one got to worry. Because when you decide that you are going to extend the man as the commissioner of police who has passed the age of retirement, right? Even if you keep him until next 2-3 years, what can that person do? You have to decide very early, identify young, bright, professional people and train them. When I went to the Staff College, I was part of the process where they identify you as an upcoming good, send you to Staff College early to get the training. I went there in 1998, right? 1994, sorry, get the training. I went to FBI in 1998. You have 10 years, 12 years, 20 more years to go so that you learn, you can come, you can be a part of a process to implement these changes and so on. And you can see the changes implemented and take root. What am I there for a year or two thinking about retirement? He's not going to contribute much to the system, but that's a nearsightedness. What that's nearsightedness, and it's about time if they really and let me say before we go that I am convinced based on the empirical evidence that the government is not serious about professionalizing the police force. Let me repeat that. I am convinced that the government is not serious about professionalizing the police force. Because if you have a professional police force, as we alluded to earlier, you tell them something and say, no, that can't work. But they do not want that. They want when they tell you jump, you got to say, oh, aye. They want them to tell you go and arrest David Hinds, they're going to go and arrest David Hinds. They want when they tell them trumped up charges against Paul Slow and Kidaki Amsterdam and others, they will do just that. They don't want a professional organization. And that is something that will redound to the detriment of the country, to the detriment of the citizens of the country. Because people are watching, people are watching and making their own assessment. You can try to hoodwink and fool a lot of the locals because you want their vote. But people in the international community are watching and they know exactly what the reality is.
Mr. Paul, so quite a depressing conclusion, but a sobering one, that only we, the people, can change. And we would have a chance, hopefully, later on this year. Mr. Paul Slow, you answered our call at the very last moment.
At the very last moment.
And you said you were coming for half an hour.
Yes.
And we've gone the full hour.
I'm
On
glad you
behalf,
remember that. I'm glad you remember that. Because when I
on,
got the call, I was prepared to go to bed. I wanted to go to bed early tonight. Yeah.
on behalf of Mark Benchop and the Straight Up family, I want to thank you very much for coming and going beyond the call of duty. In the end, it will pay off. I am very, very sure of that. Thank you very much, sir.
You're most welcome, Doc. It's always a pleasure to be on any program, whether it's Straight Up, whether it's your program, Politics 101, or any other program. Always a pleasure to be there and to share and to impart. And I want to invite your viewers. I see many of them here who are also on Speaking Out. I see some of my Speaking Out students here too. And remember, Mondays and Wednesdays from 11 o'clock and 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Speaking Out, exposing corruption and incompetence. We're going to continue to analyze these things, and we're going to continue to bring you the credible, valuable information.
Thank you very much, and say hello to Mr. Conway for me. Day school, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Well, not Friday, Friday now and again, but the schedule is Monday. Yeah, right, yeah.
Day school. And then, of course, I have evening school. And Sherrod is somewhere in between evening. And you all still have the energy to come to night school. I love you all very much. Love you all very much. And please do remember, Basil is still on. Basil is still on. I know the fighting is down, but he keep on keeping on. Basil, it's good to see you, my brother, and continue to do what you are doing. Mary Figueroa, Mary and Mary, I have to say that you are active. You're a trooper. I see Ron there tonight. I'm jealous. But I'm jealous in a nice way. Thank you very much, sir. And to you, the audience,
welcome, yeah.
Continue to do what you all are doing, because these shows cannot take place without you all. We can sit there and talk to the breeze. It would be nice to talk to the breeze, because you can say there is something serene about that. But in real life, you want to talk to people. Not so Marlon Thomas, who is another trooper. Marlon, you don't miss evening school, you don't miss day school, and you don't miss night school. You get an A+++. Again. Good night. Lemon, is Lemon here tonight? Lemon, please, I want to get my face off the screen, because
so do I.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If cost of living double, I don't know what happened.
I got
How we gonna do a body man walk right now? You ready? Boxer, let me go now. Hear me sing now. Body walk.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.